themselves muted. We do have a systems administrator on tonight who can help out with that, but it's good if you self-monitor as well. Right now, he's troubleshooting a couple other things.
Somebody say something. I'm having trouble with my audio.
I am here. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Yep.
Still no good. What the dickens?
Did I hear a bird?
Not from here.
Maybe from Rebecca. Rebecca, do you have birds?
I have a cockatiel right
Your
next to
brother
me.
was a cockatiel.
Oh, unfortunately, my headset isn't working.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. I am so pleased to see such a wonderful turnout. It happens that a lot of us who are interested in ending plastic pollution are also really happy about eating out. So it's good to see you, or at least we like to have somebody else do the cooking. I am going to get my slideshow open now. Share screen as we're getting going. Okay. So my name is Megan Wolf. I'm the policy director at Beyond Plastics, and I'd love to welcome you this evening for our webinar on working with restaurants to help reduce or eliminate the use of non-essential plastics in restaurants. The session will be recorded for those unable to join us this evening. And those of you who are comfortable and are here, I'd love to invite you to turn on your cameras. I find that seeing each other's faces really helps to build community. And it's also a lot more fun to give a lecture to an audience that I can see. There. Wow, there was a link in there. Okay, hold on just a sec. Technical difficulty. Okay. This happened to one of my colleagues a while back too. It's
Yeah. Zoom can be persnickety.
It is a little persnickety. Okay, back to share screen. And back to my slideshow, which hopefully doesn't have any more hidden links in it. Okay. So at the end of the summer, Beyond Plastics published a guide on how restaurants could reduce their use of plastics. Why did we create this guide? One notices when one works in plastic pollution that there are certain flashpoints that seem to bother people more than others. From among the millions of tons of single-use plastics that we're producing and discarding each year, there are a couple of items that reliably seem to drive sustainability-minded people totally batty. The first one, I think you'll all recognize, is clamshells for berries. The second seems to be takeout containers and all the plastic stuff that comes from ordering out. There could be plenty of reasons for this. From my sociology armchair, I have a feeling that it's because those items make people feel guilty about their small but necessary indulgences. They sort of taint what were meant to be positive purchases. But it's almost like the litter that's associated with food is the last straw, literally and figuratively, for a lot of people. And I do have to say, it appears to be an important one. Here in the guide, we spelled out a few main facts that characterize the problem with plastics as it pertains to dining. And I'll try not to depress you by reading too many of them, but they are indeed sobering. For instance, the vast majority of disposable tableware and to-go packaging is not recyclable. And even beverage containers that have chasing arrows are rarely recycled. Less than 6% of plastic in the United States is effectively recycled. And yes, a lot of that winds up as litter. Grace Lee, who's based in California, pointed out a study to me from the San Francisco Bay Area, which demonstrated that 67% of the litter collected there was food and beverage packaging. So we know there's a problem. This slide was the quick start version, that takes people through the guide step by step, and it's easy to show you, so I'm showing it now. In the guide, we tried to focus on common, simple things that restaurants could do, things that were likely to please customers and even save money. We defined restaurant very broadly, from sit-down dining to taco stands to school cafeterias, and we set up this guide to try to provide solutions in a step-by-step way. The most important feature wound up being about the promotion of simple and cost-effective ways to transition to reuse, because reuse turns out to be the gold standard of sustainability. One of the coolest findings that we also had in this process was how affordable it actually is to switch to reusable wares. Most of the time they pay for themselves within a few weeks or a few months. And it turns out that even tiny storefronts that don't think they have a lot of dishwashing capacity often have more than they think they do. So we'd be here all night if I were to go into all the findings of this guide. So I just wanted to share two others that I found most compelling. The first one was about bioplastics and compostable takeout containers. What was really interesting to me as I researched this was how misleading most of this supposedly compostable, biodegradable, or otherwise bioplastic stuff is. It's like we want it to work so badly, but the reality is that most of it isn't really what was promised. Bioplastics are derived mostly from plant sugars, but it takes chemical additives to manufacture them, as many as it does regular plastics. And some of them even have petrochemicals, basically plastic, in them that are used to help give them extra structure and boost their usability. So they're fortified to hold their shapes. And these chemical additives are a mess. A lot of them are carcinogens, they can be endocrine disruptors, and then there are forever chemicals like PFAS that nobody wants in their compost. So even a lot of the fiberware, the cardboard, is coated with chemicals like PFAS. When this gets into the soil, it gets into the biocycle. And most of the plastics on the market won't break down even in the industrial composting facilities. This is a picture of some plastics that were retrieved from compost purchased at the MRF near where I live. This plastic packaging was mixed in and had to be pulled out. This MRF runs through the plastic packaging about 3 times in order to get it to biodegrade. And even so, this is what came out. This is so common that only a small percentage of industrial composting sites in this country will even accept bioplastics or packaging, including now this one. So reusables are not a thing, or rather reusables are a thing, and compostables are not. But not all the news was bad. A lot of it was really just plain interesting. And some of it is what brings us here tonight. The last thing I want to mention is what became very clear as I worked on the guide, and even more so since it came out, is that reducing plastics really requires behavior change, which is not a one-visit thing. Like most printed material, the restaurant guide is not going to read itself, and it's not going to introduce itself to busy business owners or pique anybody's interest without some help. People need to be involved in this process. People need to smile and tell a joke. People need to go back again and again to decision makers at restaurants and get them interested. And like almost everything else in the grassroots activist world, relationships are what's going to make this turn. Warm relationships help interested parties walk through the steps of reducing plastics. It needs to be personable and as friendly and easy as possible. So this turned out to be a very big point because almost as soon as the restaurant guide launched, I started to hear from 2 specific cohorts of people. The first was volunteers who wanted to approach restaurants, and the second was groups that were already doing so but wanted to amplify their footprint using this guide. So let's solve one problem with another here. This is a great opportunity. Grace Lee is the program director at Rethink Disposable, and she and I have been putting our heads together for the last few weeks about how to use the strategies that her staff use to approach restaurants, along with the Beyond Plastics guide, to help volunteers work effectively with eateries. We put together this webinar tonight in order to talk about those tactics, and we set up a toolkit so that volunteers can use some of the materials that I put together, some that Grace has developed, and they can have the help and support of both organizations. I have had a really good time getting to know Grace, and you guys are the first cohort that we're inviting into the partnership. So I'll stop sharing my screen and introduce Grace so that she can talk to you herself about what she's been up to. A couple words about Grace. Grace Lee joined the Clean Water Fund's Rethink Disposable program in 2018 as a newly trained restaurant engagement specialist, and she took over as program director in February of 2020. Grace has worked throughout the San Francisco Bay Area and Southern California to implement circular reuse systems anywhere that there's foodware. So restaurants, cafes, froyo shops, schools, catering, even yacht clubs. Grace has experience in transforming food service at large food spaces, as well as small, independently owned establishments. She has 16 plus years experience in resource conservation, social marketing, and orchestrating projects centered around water quality improvement and, most importantly, behavioral change. Grace holds a bachelor's degree in applied ecology from the University of California, Irvine, and a master's degree in environmental science from UC Southern California. So welcome, Grace.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, everyone. So it's really an honor to be here. I can't believe how many people are on this webinar. I'm so excited. I mean, if anywhere we're going to create a critical mass, it's right here. So this is incredible, and I really appreciate everyone's time and listening ear. So I am going to share my screen so we can get started. All right. Okay. I'm going to hide this floating meeting controls. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, wonderful. All right. So as Megan said, I am the program director for Rethink Disposable. It is a plastics and single-use foodware eradication program of Clean Water Fund and Clean Water Action, which is a national nonprofit. We have 17 offices across the country. Our headquarters is in DC. And the California office where I work is in Oakland, California, but I happen to live in Los Angeles. So we're all over the place, which is great because restaurants and food are all over the place as well. So just as a little background, Megan alluded to this about the study that kind of started it all. So back in 2011, Clean Water Fund conducted a litter characterization study in 4 cities in the Bay Area. So what we really wanted to do was understand this kind of gap in data of what was actually in street litter that we knew was going to be waterbound. So it was going to get into the San Francisco Bay or the waterways. And so we conducted this study. We picked up 11,000 pieces of trash. And as Megan said, almost 70% was food and beverage packaging. So Rethink was born out of the idea that we would move upstream and create a source reduction program. So stop all of this trash from even being generated in the first place. And so Rethink was born out of that. To date, we've worked with 300 small and medium-sized restaurants and cafes and yacht clubs and what have you. And we've worked with 13 institutions, including the cafe up at Microsoft at Seattle, University of San Francisco, Genentech, and 2 unified school districts in California. And collectively, the program, since 2011, we are eliminating or reducing 22.3 million pieces of disposable packaging from ever being generated, needing to be sorted or landfilled or incinerated or captured. So we're just stopping it at the source. We are a small but mighty team. And so we're working with various jurisdictions and have grants and foundation funding, but we can only do so much. So this is an amazing, synergy here with all of you, because what I'm going to do here is share what we've learned over the past more than a decade on how we've converted and really worked hand in hand with restaurants and also large institutions to transform their food service, untether them from single-use plastics and single-use compostables and recyclables, because we know that's just kind of a myth, and really just show you how we've done it. And hopefully you'll have some takeaways, and hopefully you'll have some questions that we can answer along the way. Okay, so we'll get started here. And Megan, jump in if I miss something or what have you. We're trying to squeeze in 11 years of learnings into 25 minutes, so it's kind of
No pressure.
All right, let's see here. Okay, so we boiled it down to 6 steps. Observe, sign up, shop, implement, verify, and promote. So using this 6-step process, what we're going to talk about today is how to identify restaurants that you can work with that are good candidates for a transformation to reusables, and convince them and get them over to reusables, and then how to get them to sustain those changes. We've found that restaurants that work with Rethink Disposable to transform their food service operations, on average, save between $3,000 to $22,000 a year. So that is from small to medium business. They can save thousands of dollars from switching to reusables. They are able to reduce and eliminate the need for 110,000 pieces of disposable packaging every year. And that's about 1,300 pounds. So if you know the weight of a plastic spoon or a plastic fork, you know, it practically weighs nothing. So it's a lot of trash that we're preventing, again, from being landfilled, incinerated, sorted, captured. And so the magic of this program is that by going through this process, we can really save businesses money. And that is really the true kind of, I don't know, it's, you know, right, the bottom line, if you're a small business owner, that is your focus. And so we've really have tied together waste reduction and cost savings all in one program. All right, step 1. So before you even talk to anyone at the restaurant, you want to do your homework, right? So you want to start with observations. You can start with desk research. So you look on Yelp, you look on Google reviews, and you kind of look to see how the food is served. Or if you go to your favorite restaurant and you just really, keep your radar on for any disposable packaging that you could target for elimination or reduction, that is a good place to start. I mean, if everyone on this call right now or this webinar, transformed one restaurant over the course of this year, we would have, how many people are on? Like 300 restaurants that have transformed. That is the total number of everything that Rethink has done since the beginning of its inception. So do you see a mix of disposable and reusable items? Usually what this means is that 1, they're used to using reusable items. So adding on another one will probably not be that hard. 2, they probably have a dishwasher. So even though that is, 50% of the restaurants that we work with have a commercial dishwasher. The other half just have a 3-sink system, which is just kind of the basic for what a restaurant needs to wash their dishes. But if you see a mix, that means they might have, a dishwasher, which makes things a little bit easier. Our employees handing out extra straws, extra napkins, cutlery, condiments, putting them in the bag, without even asking, or throwing them on the table without you even asking or requesting them. Do you see excessive packaging? Are they double rolling the burritos or sandwiches, or, are they rolling up the sandwiches and then putting it on a plate, right? So just completely unnecessary. What does the self-serve station look like? Are they serving in bulk, or is everything in an individually wrapped format, right? So just then we can just convert a self-serve station and save a lot of packaging, a lot of plastic. Do you see contamination in the trash or bus bins, right? So you kind of want to take a peek. If you see disposable ware and plates and food, that's definitely a good candidate, because what can happen is you can simplify and really improve business efficiency by having just reusables and food. You can scrape the food off of the plate and put the plate in the bus bin, and then you're done, right? So there's no sorting, extra sorting, and extra mess. So those are all great candidates. Some things to kind of stay away from. What we've done is, we love to spend our time with locally, independently, family-owned businesses rather than franchises and chains, because you can end up just kind of hamster on a wheel, trying to get to the right person at a Starbucks or at, a large McDonald's or what have you. So if the owner is not on site, is what I'm saying, that's probably not a good candidate for a transformation. If the owner is on site, they can make decisions quickly. They don't have to go up the chain of command to try to figure out if they can switch over a cup or a plate or what have you, especially one that's branded. And you know what? There's also just kind of cutting your losses as well. If you do see that, then just move on to the next restaurant because there are plenty of restaurants to work with. Okay, number 2, the sign up. So believe it or not, most of the time that we spent in the field looking for restaurants and trying to work with them is actually just trying to find the decision maker. So what we do is we give ourselves a 3 times max. So we go into the restaurant up to 3 times to try to find the owner or a very responsible and very empowered manager. You want to go when they're not busy, right? So if there's even one person waiting in line to order, don't use that time to talk to them. You wait until that person's order is finished. The best times generally, depending on the type of restaurant it is, right after breakfast, around 9 to 11, and right before dinner, 2 to 4, right? Sometimes you kind of want to stay away from before lunch or dinner rush or breakfast rush because that's when they're prepping. So they won't have time to talk to you. And then when you're there, since you've already done the observations for the first step, you already have in mind what you would like them to switch over, right? So if you've already sat down and they've given you, they've served you and your meal is there, everything's unreusable, but except for the kids' cups. And this is kind of my personal peeve. It's when you speak to them, you can bring that recommendation up as an example of how you can help them and what the restaurant can do to further their elevation of their dining service or transformation. Hey, I noticed that everything is reusable except for the kids' cups. There are actually really amazing, affordable options for reusable kids' cups. And what a teaching moment that would be, right? To teach our kids that reusables instead of things that you throw away is the way that we should be living our lives. Would you consider doing the reusables? They're super cheap. I can find them for you and we can make it happen. So something along those lines, because you know what, you may never see the owner again, or you may never catch the manager again. So you want to be able to have those recommendations already in your back pocket to suggest the very first time you speak with them. We have a lot of handouts and a lot of engagement materials to show whoever you're speaking with the benefits of reusables. So Rethink Disposable, we do data dives with a percentage of the businesses that we work with in transition. And we figure out how much they're saving per year. As I mentioned before, they can save up to $22,000 a year annually, and how much trash they can reduce and what the weight of that is. And so what we do, you don't quite want to hand this over because with a busy restaurant owner, people that work in the food industry have zero time to spend reading or looking at even flipping through a catalog of reusables, even if they wanted to switch. So what you want to do is actually just have the case study. And I'll go back to this too, because there's some really cool storylines in these case studies. You flip to the back and you just run your finger down to the savings, right? So, this restaurant reminds me of yours. There's a nonprofit, Rethink Disposable, or program that helped this Hawaiian barbecue place, a burger place, a sushi place, switch over to reusables, and they were able to save for almost $4,000. That's amazing, right? And the upfront cost to get over to reusables was like $300, and they had a payback period of maybe just 4 months or something, right? So you want to really be pointed and very succinct with even the engagement materials that you show. If we have time, Megan, I'll go back to those case studies to kind of tell those background stories.
Yeah, they're great case studies. We do need to kind of pick up the pace if we're going to get to hear from Sarah.
Okay.
I love all this detail. This is great.
Okay. All right. So I'll kind of skim the surface a little bit more. All right, so we also have, again, Beyond Plastics, one-page guide teaser. We have customer engagement materials like, do you really need a straw? You can just hand it over to the restaurant. Hey, why don't you put this over by your self-serve? Business cards are great. If you printed those at home and you had something like kind of, validated why you're there, who you are, to kind of just really gain that trust really quickly, right? Because it's about relationship building. And again, we have case studies, and Beyond Plastics will send out a couple case studies post-webinar that you can use. Okay, have a fast pitch ready. Like I said, you may never see this person again, right? So you want to be able to really capitalize on the time that you have with them. Savings is number one. You can save a ton of money by switching to reusables. There's a post-COVID pitch that we've been really kind of focusing on. It's people are taking the risk to dine out. They want it to be a special occasion. If they're going to eat off of disposables, they might as well just order in and not, come to the restaurant. It really elevates the dining experience, and people are looking for that right now. They'll significantly reduce their waste. You are there as a volunteer to help them find the perfect products, the perfect reusable product for them. We have free educational materials that we can share with their customers. And there also may be financial assistance available. So Rethink is expanding nationally to Maryland, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut schools. So in any of these areas, and also Los Angeles and the Bay Area, we have about $300 to $500 that we can allocate per restaurant to purchase reusables for the business. Word of mouth, you can help spread the word and promote the restaurant, give them that marketing edge, and the environmental pitch. But we never actually lead with the environmental pitch. We lead with cost savings, and that's kind of a big, huge lesson that we've learned over the years. Okay, common barriers. Change is hard. So there are lots of reasons people cannot switch to reusables or cannot stop giving out bags or straws or what have you. They can't afford the reusable foodware. They don't have anyone to wash dishes. There's no extra storage room. People will complain about the changes, or this just won't work at my business, or it's a health risk. So through the years, we kind of have formulated responses to this. And I think, Megan, I don't think go through these. Do you want me to just take one or two of them?
Let's keep moving, because I just want to be able to have a conversation about some of this with the people here.
Sounds good. Okay. Third, you do all the work for the restaurant. They are very, very busy. And even if they wanted to switch to reusables, they probably don't have time. So go to Webstaurant online. Sometimes we even purchase from Amazon. We hate doing that, but sometimes it's the cheapest, for whatever reason. Or we go to a local, restaurant supply store, and we have a recommended list of products for the restaurant. So you do that shopping for them, and then you can show them and get confirmation that these are things that they want. Implementation. Our program does implementation. So we deliver and we unpackage the boxes and we set it up and, and all of that. What's really been kind of a cool thing that we've been doing is you set up a photo shoot. So you help them implement by setting up this photo shoot, first in reusables and then in disposables, so that they can practice plating on the reusables and really get that muscle memory in. Let's see what else I have here. Okay, yeah, and you can help install signage. You can launch or, update social media. You can make customer engagement materials available. We use Canva, which is a free online program. And again, the photo shoot is really important to get people in the habit of using your reusables. And then verify, right? So after they say they're going to implement the reusables, just check back in a couple weeks later. And promote. So we want to make sure that the businesses are sustaining their changes. So we want to bring them more customers because of these changes. So you can promote on Yelp. They have sustainability attributes that you can punch in now, and use a lot of pictures, right? So you really tell the story with these before and after photos, the story of the business owner, the story of the storefront, and so forth. And then again, just promoting. So you could email the owner, thanking them for participation. There's also an online app called Remark that you can put on your phone, and they create emails and they find the right person to send the email to, and they write a sustainability recommendation email for you, and they email it out for you if you don't want confrontation, don't want to talk to them in person. Again, Yelp, use your network, word of mouth, post on social media, and promote these wonderful restaurants that are making the switch to reusables. Okay, that is it. Thanks, Megan.
No problem. Thank you so much, Grace. So I want to shift our focus from the literal professionals who've been doing this work and what they have to say to it or about it to a volunteer, much like many of you will hopefully become if you're not already, who's been already trying to work with restaurants and had her own, I would call it, journey or her own experience. I'm going to share my screen again as I introduce Sarah Shelley. Okay, so Sarah Shelley reached out to me, like I said, as soon as the restaurant guide launched. She's the director of Plastic-Free QAC at Queen Anne's County in the state of Maryland. She moved to the Chesapeake Bay in 2017 from the DC metro area and completed an environmental education program about the Chesapeake Bay and civic engagement in 2018, after which she joined the newly formed Plastic-Free QAC. Now, Plastic-Free QAC became an affiliate of Beyond Plastics in March, but I've only had the pleasure of really getting to learn more about Sarah since she reached out to me. She was one of those who wanted pointers, how to work with restaurants, and was interested in telling me what Plastic-Free QAC was already doing. So I'll tell you just a little bit about her group, and she'll tell you more. As many of you are probably in very similar groups. Plastic-Free QAC is 7 highly committed volunteers who originated as part of a women's circle, which was founded by Bente Cooney, who's also a Beyond Plastics volunteer. So you see a theme here. Maryland's Eastern Shore includes an abundance of wildlife, miles of coastline, waterways, magnificently rich, ecologically fragile as well. Members of the group who felt passionate about protecting it created Plastic-Free QAC as a separate organization, and they have been busy. A monthly trash cleanup yielded unusual large amounts of fishing lines, so they created a fishing line recycling program called Reel It In. And they're going through all the steps of pushing for plastic bag legislation on the state and local level. A significant part of their mission is to harness the enthusiasm of locals and businesses to keep the Chesapeake Bay clean. And so this past spring, they decided to launch a Skip the Straw campaign for Plastic-Free July. That is what brings them here today, because it turned out that working with restaurants to move away from plastics is not simple. They developed a pitch, a pledge, a phalanx of volunteers to visit and revisit businesses. And the ask was simple. During the month of July, suspend the practice of automatically adding straws to drinks. But then it turned out not to be simple. So I'll let Sarah tell it from here.
Okay.
Welcome, Sarah.
Finally got on. Thanks so much, Megan, and it's great to see so many faces. And yeah, our program's very different. We're really a grassroots organization of volunteers on the ground, literally going door to door to different restaurants. And so again, and also Grace's organization has been a huge resource for us moving forward. But our campaign at Queen Anne's County really started or evolved out of our own shore-friendly restaurant manual that a very dedicated graduate student / intern created for us, along with a pretty in-depth database of 42 Queen Anne's County restaurants. And these restaurants did not include fast foods and chains. So that shore-friendly restaurant manual and the slide deck that accompanied it really proved to be a great way to get us started in giving the opportunity to promote the program very early on. And after much deliberation, we decided that to choose straws as a starting point because we thought it was the easiest ask. Restaurants we're still and we really
Hey, Sarah, sorry to
put any
interrupt.
financial, but purposefully simple.
Sarah, we're having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah.
It might be better if you turned off your video. We won't see your smiling face, but it'll come through better. Could you turn off your video so we can hear you?
Is that better? Can you hear me better?
Yes, thank you.
All right, I see a thumbs up. All right, so as I was saying, after much deliberation, we decided to start with straws. And we chose the name Rethink the Straw, which was kind of a soft sell. We were not telling restaurants that their customers couldn't have a straw, only that they had to refrain from automatically putting it in a straw in every glass. We also chose to launch this campaign as part of Plastic Free July, with the overall goal to reduce the volume of trash during that month. The goal for the restaurants, however, was to train staff to not only offer straws upon request, which was a big ask for some of these restaurants out here. And by doing so, they would save some money and at the same time reduce the amount of trash for the month of July. So out of 42 restaurants, we targeted 18. And basically, as I said, went door to door over 2 weeks' time. Of those 18, 16 actually signed on to the program through a pledge, which was far more than we really expected. Of those 16, 8 remained in compliance for the duration of July. And most of those, if not all of them, have continued the straws upon request since the end of July. So once a restaurant had signed that pledge, we then provided them with support materials and electronic links, which included a one-page summary of the program, tips on how to talk to your staff, a promotional flyer to hang in the restaurant at server station, a door sticker, and table tents. The incentives were cost-saving benefits, social media coverage, and being identified as a leadership restaurant with free publicity at a green drinks kickoff event, as well as sharing postings on social media channels throughout the month of July. So it was a lot of hard work. Out here, the majority of our restaurants are not using disposables except for carryout. We have larger restaurants. There's a huge volume of traffic, especially in summer months for people traveling to the beach. But we still have, we have many needs to go with, and we're planning to launch a second phase of this program. So really, I think what's important for you all is to understand better what worked for us. Early on, as some of the larger, more well-known restaurants signed, 2, 3, others were quick. So that was a big plus for us. The other thing is that So far, most restaurants that complied are continuing to use straws upon request after July. However, few took the next steps on their own to replace carryout bags with paper or to purchase biodegradable straws, which was a big win for us. A few of the compliant restaurants reported a significant reduction in straw usage, which was measured by the number of boxes, essentially the equivalent of 500 boxes that were either 500 straws that were either used per week or per month. And another surprise that we had was that there were no reports, at least yet. Again, we're just starting our post campaign surveys, but no reports yet that any of the restaurant staff created any resistance or had complaints about taking on this campaign. So that was great. What didn't work? So what didn't work for us? It was hard to get compliance. Grace talked about this. You don't waste too much time, digging around for managers and finding managers that are just not that available. So we would go into a restaurant and everyone was more or less became eager to sign on. However, there was no clear buy-in from the management. And what happened then, even though we gave them support materials, in some of the cases, the restaurant staff never even got the message. Okay. So getting clear, another thing that didn't work is we weren't as educated then about how to go about getting clear channels of communication identified in advance of going into the restaurant. In some cases, we ended up wasting time speaking with less senior managers, and just identifying an on-site person, one point person, really became very important. Also, identifying a person who does the restaurant's social media would have been a big win for us, and to coordinate our social media with them and vice versa. And so far, we've only had one restaurant that reported that customers at the bar complained loudly about not being automatically being given straws. And that particular restaurant ended up dropping the campaign completely at the bar. And then in recent weeks when we visited, there were straws everywhere. Staff turnover was another reason. And then we have the denier, what we came to call the denier. So when meeting with this one non-compliant restaurant, again, this isn't a post-campaign survey, they said they were actually still doing the straws upon a request and very committed to this campaign. However, when I looked around and asked why every table and almost all the customers still had straws on the table, the answer was simply because everyone asked for them. So in this case, coming in and really setting a clear goal to reduce the number of boxes per week or per month, however they wanted to design it, would have been much more beneficial. In their mind, they were still doing it because they had a strong belief in, saving the turtles. And so while that can be a valuable reason, it wasn't realistic for this particular restaurant. So I do have a couple questions for Grace, because we're really making it up as we go along. Megan was a great point of contact for me early on, and now we've got Grace and these two fabulous manuals that are just I hope will inspire others to take action. But my question for Grace is, how to go about getting a realistic buy-in and commitment from managers when we're not able to offer any monetary incentive.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a great question. Definitely, that carrot for us works really well. And we usually get those through funding from our jurisdictional partners. So from cities and counties and grants. And I know that those exist elsewhere. So even, reaching out to your local like supervisor district or city councils or neighborhood councils. Sometimes folks have discretionary funds that they can give for various projects. And this would be such a, in some places, such an easy win for that politician, right? So you're helping businesses and you're helping to save the environment. You're doing all the work for them. They just need to fund you. And we're just talking, we usually spend about $300 to $500 per restaurant, because when you buy in bulk, things can be, pretty affordable. So for really nice plates, you can get like 12 of them for like $40, and those are like for really nice plates. So, I say there are funding sources that, we could, that folks can look into. There's also a nonprofit called Plastic Free Restaurants that also subsidizes the switch from petroleum to non-petroleum foodware. So there are definitely options out there.
Great. And
Yeah.
one question, if there's time, Megan, I'll go ahead and ask. One of our needs out here is carry-out disposables, replacing plastic carry-out disposables with a biodegradable product and getting funding for that, or even biodegradable straw products, those kinds of things, versus cutlery and in restaurant reusable. So my question is, does Rethink Disposables provide funding for any of that? Or I kind of get the impression not, but perhaps you have. Do you know any other sources for that, short of the grants that you, any organizations that are funding for those kinds of biodegradable products?
Yeah. And again, someone was asking about that organization. It's Plastic Free Restaurants. Wait, so Sarah, you're asking about if there's funding for more sustainable packaging, like fiberware and things like that?
Yes.
The only one that I'm aware of is a project that we're working on in San Mateo County in Northern California. And they are providing rebates for disposable foodware that's compliant with their new county ordinance. But I don't know of anywhere else that's paying for that.
Okay.
I had a question for both of you, which is, I myself am a conflict averse person. I will hide under the bed before I try to tell somebody in a restaurant or in their own business place, aside from where I work, what I think they should do, even if I have some very strong ideas about it. So when I look at my own guide, I'm like, yes, go volunteers, let's go and get out there and spread the word. And then I'm like, okay, can we find some conflict-free ways of doing this? For both of you, I'm wondering how do you handle pushback or points where the conversation gets a little tense, like somebody with a restaurant full of straws says, oh no, we don't use any straws here. How do you navigate that?
Oh, gosh, that's such a great question. I mean, my go-to thing is Remark. So it's a app that you can put on your phone, and they send sustainability feedback to CEOs and business owners for you. That's been a really good one. And there have been a lot of progress or like changes because of these emails actually. And it's not just restaurants, it's like IKEA and Southwest Airlines and things like that. That's a really good one. Yelp now has sustainability attributes that you can enter for a restaurant. So do they accept your containers? Are they serving on reusables? Are they serving on compostables? So you can put that in also as a review and extra details. But I think, I think in terms of, gosh, being non-confrontational, I mean, I think also it's just kind of getting the person during the right time. So definitely when they're not busy, and do it with a smile, that goes such a long way. And if you have time, just kind of chat. And, especially if it's a neighborhood place that you go to every day, get to know the people that work there, right? So it's about personal relationships. There was one time I spent 45 minutes talking to this guy. He said no, it was a hard no. And then we ended up talking about like business school or something. It turned out that he thought I was Korean, but I'm Taiwanese. He's also Taiwanese. His wife was born in El Paso, Texas. I was born in El Paso, Texas. And our parents went to the same university in Taiwan. And after knowing, after finding that out, he's like, wait, what did you want me to do? So it was just like a full, complete flip. So really it's the relationships I think that are so important out there.
Yeah. I had envisioned a robust conversation for this evening, but it's really hard to summarize a guide, a business, and then also a volunteer program and leave time for Q&A among the people and the audience. But there is good news. There's going to be a secondary platform for asking questions, audience members. And for now, I wanted to just make a couple observations of what I learned from talking to both Grace and Shelley that I thought were really fascinating in this project. The first was involved in the hook. For many of us here who have come to this webinar, the hook is plastics and reducing plastics. It's ecological, it's environmental. But what Grace's materials really showed was that if you're speaking with a business, it's important to be speaking their primary language, which is that they are a business. And the bottom line is that they are going to need to make it through the end of the day, hopefully make a profit, pay their staff, and keep on going. So the hook, cynical as it feels to some of us, is really about savings more than it's going to be about turtles, which I thought was very interesting speaking with Sarah, because the Chesapeake is a place that is so thoroughly associated with seafood and with live fish and all of the abundance that comes from the water. So many of those restaurants were right on the water. You would think that it would have been a very, very simple thing, and yet it wasn't. So I found that really, really fascinating. In talking to them both too, and actually I will ask this, because this is such an uphill roll for you're rolling this stone up the hill and up the hill. And I know that it involves returning to restaurants and kind of checking on things and maybe having to be a little confrontational. So what motivates you? What sparks joy in this process?
Oh gosh, wait, is that a question for me and Sarah?
For you and Sarah, yeah.
Well, I know for us, it's little changes are big changes. And if you get a buy-in from one or two restaurants that are really committed, and then you see them make sustainable choices on their own as a result of just a little movement in the right direction, it's rewarding. And it really does make, the ones we really try to stay focused on the positive and all that we're doing. And I think that that's important too, as you move forward. Small changes can be a stepping stone towards more change.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's so many reasons for me to do this, from big to small, like climate change, big, small, food kind of just tastes better with the reusable fork, not plastic fork. There was a student that told me that, if their school switched to reusables, it would be more like they were at home. when they were at school. It gets me every time. I always want to cry when I think about that. But, you know, it's really just kind of from our research and our data collection, we found that it saves businesses money. And, you know, it's just one of those things that, like, when does that ever happen? This perfect nexus of environment and economics ever happen? So that kind of really pushes me forward, because businesses are spending so much on foodware. It's more than sometimes the food that they have to purchase, you know, to serve their customers. Supply chain sucks right now, and everything is just getting more and more expensive with inflation. A lot of ordinances, a lot of municipalities are requiring more expensive compostables, like paper-based things. So it's just getting more expensive for a business to stay alive. So by switching to reusables, that's just another way to save some money, which is desperately needed right now in the food industry.
Yeah, those are great answers. Thank you, guys. That actually motivated me a lot more right there too. So like I said, the bad news is that we don't have time to do Q&A with the audience tonight, which I had hoped to do. But the good news is that Grace and I are launching a platform where we do hope to engage with you. And there is going to be further opportunity to do the Q&A. So I wanted to introduce some next steps as we close this evening. The first is, here, I'll share my screen again. The first is that we would like all of you in the audience to help us out, letting restaurants know about this guide and also know about some instruction that we're going to be offering from Beyond Plastics on how to use the guide for them. Like I said, this guide doesn't introduce itself. It needs that personal touch. We at Beyond Plastics sent it out to news agencies. We sent it to restaurant networks, and we talked it up to all of the people who will still return our phone calls, who are personal friends in the culinary industry. And now we're handing it over to you to do the same. So we have on our website, and I'll be sending out the link to everyone who has registered. This is in our toolkit also, this single pager that you can use to walk into a restaurant or to a friend's house or anywhere you want. And instead of printing out the entire guide, which it's 50 pages, but that's not too bad, but it could be worse. Anyway, the single pager, and you can tell them a little bit about the guide. This mostly shows the hooks, the costs, the fact that moving over to reusables kind of does elevate the experience, and it can attract new customers because you show your support for sustainability. Protecting the planet is a little bit lower on this list because we're thinking about it in terms of a business person, but also where to get the guide and what's inside it. So that's the one pager that we're looking forward to having people help to distribute. This is a webinar that we're going to be hosting next month. It's coming up real soon, actually, October 3rd, for restaurateurs. If you know anyone who you think will be interested in this guide, or you've gone to your local restaurant, places that you already dine, relationships that you already have, tell them about this webinar. We're going to be having a panel of restaurateurs who have successfully reduced plastic in their own businesses, talking about how they did it, what were the barriers, what were the successes. They know things that Grace and Sarah and I don't, and we're going to be asking them to share with each other how to get this done. This is our restaurant guide toolkit that Grace and I have put together. It's hosted right now on the Beyond Plastics site. And like I said, I'll be sending out a link to the entire toolkit. For those of you who want to work more individually with restaurants, this includes some of the materials that we consider to be customer engagement, like the signs that you would put up around the restaurant. Do you really need a straw? Oh, look, napkins come from trees. They're not meant to be too guilt-inducing, but to get people to think. The guide itself is there. And so is a best management sheet that you can use with restaurant owners to look through the business and see what things might be changeable. I know that Grace talked about going into restaurants, kind of looking around, doing a little research online, and then going on in person, not necessarily in a fedora with a trench coat, taking notes, but just, getting a lay of the land. And that checklist does the same thing. So you can bring it with you, kind of look around, order something, be a part of the part of the scene. If you are going out to restaurants, we would love to hear about your efforts and your successes. So we've set up a form, I'm looking for the right term, for people to fill out to let us know where they've been, how it's going, what is working, what is not. We want to hear more about it. We're going to be fine-tuning this program, and we want your input. The link to it is right there. Survey, that's the word I was looking for. And lastly, and I think this is the most important part of this evening in some ways, is we are offering more training because 1 hour was way too short to cover the kinds of things that we wanted to talk about in terms of getting into a restaurant and partnering with them, really working with people who are interested in this and finding ways to help them reduce plastics. So we're going to be offering another webinar, and Grace will be taking the lead, where she's going to give the training that her professional staff receives, or a version of it, from Rethink Disposable. So anyone who's interested in that, the registration link is there on the page. Again, I'll be sending it out, and we'll be posting the advertisement also on the Beyond Plastics site. So that said, I think we're going to wrap for this evening. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. And thank you in particular for Sarah and for Grace. It was amazing how much we had to talk about before just putting together a 1 hour webinar. The more we talked, the more we found there was to say and think about together on this subject. We're looking forward to sharing more of that with you in the future. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you very much. It was great.